welcome back to my channel. This is SC Coleman Author, or maybe I should say channels, considering this is uploaded to more places than just one. In this video, we're going to continue talking about memorandums of understanding, and with a twist. But this video is going to be focused a lot more on the so-called education system with schools and whatnot. But specifically, we're looking at what can only be termed as a child-based industry. Just like any industry, commercial or otherwise, there is a product which generally a single product, but could be many products, which function as the core. And these products are taken or made from something somehow they are created, such as products from minerals, rocks, oil, food, those types of things. Right? You've got the agricultural industry and then you've got the food industry. They're not necessarily separate from one another, but they usually are separated. So in this case, we're talking about a child industry. This doesn't have to do with commercial products developed by children. It doesn't have to do with just generated money around children, but actual physical products themselves produced from children. One of those products, called epinephrine, produced from the adrenaline of children, being that children generally will produce products in a more pure form from adults because of things like smoking and drinking and various other things that you pick up as you become an adult. Children tend to be obviously of a more pure form as far as these extractions go. It is possibly one of the most evil industries that can exist or has ever existed, far beyond an industry of prostitution or murder or theft. Perhaps it is the most evil, but that's hard to say. Up until now, and recent years, most weren't aware that this industry even exists. That's because the school system is built essentially as not just a tracking function, but also a mental distortive, blinding capacity, essentially. So within the school system, we are taught to not notice what's in front of our faces, what's in front of our very eyes. And we are also, of course, trained as breed stock. Same way you would control animals for breeding purposes. Now, there's a lot of things to demonstrate this, and there's many pieces of evidence, such as the detention center, child detention center evidence about the extraction of adrenochrome, specifically from ages average of 8 to 10 years. We're not going to be looking exactly at that. Within the school system, you understand that they have all these tracking mechanisms, and then they get so-called students and children into certain areas in which they can quietly extract these materials from them without anybody being the wiser. It's done in a very formulative, very organized fashion, and there are many, in fact, knowing participants in such a system. When you understand it's in the context of the child industry, a lot of these pieces of evidence begin to make sense. To start with, we have the Utah Department of Health Memorandum of Agreement. The name of this agreement is UDOH Baby Watch MOU with Utah State Board of Education. Utah Department of Health's Baby Watch Early Intervention Program and Utah State Board of Education, through its Special Education Services section, will implement the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. From May 12th, 2020 through April 30th, 2025, and we do find pretty much on all of these memorandums of agreement, so-called, that there's a general 5-year period in place in all of them. That's a pattern. For the Utah State Board of Education, we have Teresa Davenport, and for the Family Health and Preparedness Children with Special Health Care Needs, Lisa Davenport. This agreement, its attachments, and all documents incorporated by reference constitute the entire agreement between the parties and supersedes all prior written or oral agreements between the parties relating to the subject matter of this contract. Signed, a Leah Voorhees, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support, and a Shari A. Watkins, CPA, Fiscal Operations Director, and these are signed in 2020. We find this a lot in all of these memorandums of understanding and agreement. They generally are acting assistant, or acting in some capacity. Very few of the signatories on these binding documents are higher level, what most would consider higher level elements. The Utah Department of Health Baby Watch Early Intervention Program, Utah State Board of Education Special Education Section, transitioning planning for the ages of 27 to 36 months, which is considered potentially eligible. Now understand that's essentially a newborn. Local early intervention EI programs will inform the parent and guardian of the required referral notification during the development or review of individualized family service plan. The EI programs will use baby toddler online tracking system, BTOTS, to exchange notification information with the State Education Agency, SEA, and the Local Education Agency, LEA, through the transition from Early Intervention Data Information System, TEDI. This is going to get more creepy, I should say. EI programs will send a referral notification to the SEA and LEA electronically from BTOTS to TEDI when the child is 30 months of age. Not fewer than 90 days and at the discretion of all parties, not more than 9 months before each child's 3rd birthday, with the IFSP team, including the family, establish a transition plan in the child's IFSP. The transition plan in the IFSP should describe the steps and services that the IFSP team identifies as needed for the child and family. Discussion with and training of parents regarding future placements and other matters related to the child's transition. Identification of transition services and other activities that the IFSP team determines are necessary to support the transition of the child. Now, one thing we should note here is that with their wording, a lot of it is done under coded language because nobody's going to come out and say this stuff. They attempt to keep it mundane and as simple as possible and talk about these really disgusting and heinous activities in an everyday operational fashion so that people look at it and say, yeah, that's normal. Utah State Board of Education Special Education Section, IDEA Part B requirements. By the eligible student's 3rd birthday, an IEP has been developed and is implemented for the student. If a student's 3rd birthday occurs after the end of the school year, the student's IEP team shall determine the date in the next school year when services under the IEP will begin, except that the IEP team may determine that extended school year services are needed outside the school year. Data sharing. For purposes of tracking aggregate de-identified student progress research data, exports will be stripped of all identifying information other than the student's SSID number. When data analysis requires the exchange of data among agencies, any data variable that could potentially link a student's SSID number to any other personally identifiable number or information will only be made accessible to those staff using the data for research purposes. Now, obviously, this is not about, essentially speaking, protecting the identity of so-called students or children for the benefit or purpose of that child. Of course, that's what they'll say. They always say that. In fact, this is tight control over what they consider to be their property and their tracking information. So whatever they do to these children is compartmentalized and kept through various layers of secrecy. That is, to me, very obvious. And should be, of course, to anybody else who's had any experience with this type of evidence. When Utah School for the Deaf and Blind, USDB, is the designated LEA for a student, USDB has full responsibility for all services defined in the IEP. Of course, nowhere in this ever are parents considered to be important because they're breed stock. Notwithstanding USDB's designation as LEA for a student, a representative from the district or residence of charter school remains a required member of the IEP team. When the school district of residence or charter school is the LEA designated to provide services to a student with an IEP, the district or residence or charter school has a responsibility for providing instruction and services for the student, except the USDB may be designated as related services from the USDB must be involved in the transition process and initial IEP requirements for students who may be deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, or deaf-blind. This requires that evaluation and eligibility determination, IEP development, and placement are completed by age 3 if the child and family are currently receiving services from a parent-infant program and or deaf-blind services division. A representative from the appropriate USDB EI program must be included in the transitional meeting. Local EI programs and LEAs shall develop and implement local interagency agreements and procedures in accordance with state agreements and policies. The service period of this agreement shall be effective May 1st, 2020 through May 1st, 2025. At any time during the 5-year term, any party to the agreement may request a meeting to review and revise its provisions as necessary. Now, if you think that this is just going on in the state of Utah or any other place and is not completely ubiquitous across the planet, because the child industry is in fact the core of much of the control structure. Their product basis, their centralized component is built in most cases around the production of child products or products derived from children. Here we have signature page, Memorandum of Agreement, Transition from Early Intervention, Part C, First Step Southeast, Blackford Special Education Services, Blackford County School District. This is in Indiana. This is signed in 2019 by Coordinator of Special Services, Blackford County Schools, and Dolan Part C Intervention Service First Steps, South Lead LPCC Coordinator. Next we have Delaware Blackford Special Education Cooperative, Delaware and Muncie Community School Districts, signed by Assistant Director of Special Education, with Ann Dolan, South Lead LPCC Coordinator, also 2019. Then we have Grick and Randolph Southern, Randolph Central, Randolph Eastern, Monroe County, Liberty Perry School Districts, Greater Randolph Interlocal Cooperative, Preschool Facilitator, and Ann Dolan, 2019. Then we have Newcastle Area Special Services, Charles A. Beard School District, and Henry County Schools. Again, Ann Dolan. Blue River Valley Schools, Mount Summit, Springport, Moreland School Districts, Ann Dolan. Jay County School Corporation and Jay County School District, again, Ann Dolan. Hamilton Boone Madison Special Education Services Cooperative, Frankton, LaPel, and South Madison Schools, again, Ann Dolan. Anderson Community Schools and Madison County, Ann Dolan. Alexandria Community Schools, Alexandria Schools, Madison County, Ann Dolan. Elmwood Community Schools, Elmwood Community School Districts, Ann Dolan. Madison Grant Limited School Cooperative in Madison County, Ann Dolan. Richmond Community Schools, Wayne County School District, Ann Dolan. Centerville, Abington Community Schools and Centerville District, Ann Dolan. And finally, East Central Indiana Special Services, Franklin County, Union County, College Quarter, Northeast and Western Lane School Districts, Ann Dolan. And I'm sure that you're going to find the same thing essentially everywhere. Now this ties into the Memorandum of Understanding, Osage County Interlocal Cooperative, and the Osage Nation. Now, as I said before in a previous video, we have to understand these things in the context of parallel ideas, parallel entities, and stolen identity. The stolen identity taking place is between nations and countries. You have the state of, which includes the physical, county, and cities. Then you have the corporation state of so-and-so. And it's the same thing with country. Country of so-and-so refers to either the land boundary of an area, the physical location, or the corporate name. And in most cases, it is the corporate name that prevails because people do not recognize the fact that their countries have been stolen by a corporation acting in the name of that country. This is most apparent with the city, and it's the same with schools. With the city, you have the physical buildings and the people that live there, the residents of that city. You have the businesses, and you have the landscape. Essentially, you have everything of the physical makeup and activity of that city and the people who live there. Then you have the corporate city of, and that is made up of office buildings and employees, and they go around pretending and acting in the name of the physical location, so that when you have old funds and you have all these pots of money and all of these systems that all reference the city of so-and-so, they say that it's them and not anybody else. The same thing happened with the Osage Nation. The Osage Nation is supposed to be the people who are Osage by hereditary and descendant right, or a head right, as is usually referenced only in reference or only to oil rights. But a head right, just like the head of the state or the head of a cattle ranch, the heads of cattle, as it were, that is somebody, and those are somebodies who are identified by their heads. The headman, for instance, was an old term for a leader. In this context, you have a corporation that came along and said, we are called the Osage Nation, just like you would name any company the Osage Nation, and then they basically adopt everything that related in the past to the Osage Nation in reference to the people of the Osage and not to a select group of people operating a corporation by the name Osage. Anyway, each partner agrees to participate in the awardable Title III NAM grant that is set forth in the application for the 2016 proposal and conduct activities and carry out responsibilities identified in the application. Osage County Interlocal Cooperative, OCIC, will serve as the lead local education agency, LEA, on behalf of member districts Pawhuska, Bowring, and Hominy Public Schools. As the lead LEA, OCIC applied for the grant on behalf of the partnership and will serve as a fiscal agent for the partnership. Now, as we've done in many areas of research have shown that the primary pool that they focus on for drawing children as a product extraction resource is among Black, Indian, and poor communities. I say poor communities because you also have immigrants of being Indian or Hispanic descent or African, but also the poor so-called white communities as well. All of these are based off of your appearance and skin color, but also your so-called socio or social economic background, making it much easier to extract products from children without anyone being the wiser, because generally speaking, people do not care about the people in those areas, and the people in those areas don't care about their neighbor or anybody else, because they're all being suppressed into the rat race of running after money so that their children can be harvested. All grant activities will end immediately, and no obligations by OCIC to make further payments to Osage Nation are expected once OCIC is notified that grant funding is ended. So there's, of course, the financial leash, which they always use. Each will hire proposed staff with a Native American preference. That is a big one. That's like you write on an application for work that you're Native American. That's precluding Osage. That's the reason why the Osage government is not staffed by Osage. It's staffed by everybody who has a preference from some other group or another. They don't actually want Osages working in the so-called Osage Nation. Isn't that interesting? They want people with a quote-unquote Native American preference. The OCIC and Osage Nation hereby assures and represents that it agrees to be bound to every statement and assurance made by the lead LEA, that's the OCIC, and in the application. So basically, this is establishing hierarchical over control of the so-called OCIC over the Osage Nation Corporation, and by extension, the people of the Osage Nation, which they claim ownership over. Modification of this MOU do not relieve members of the partnership from implementing the content of project launch. Therefore, the USDE program and officer must also approve any modification that would require change in the approved application. Moreover, in no case will modification of this MOU relieve any member of the partnership of its responsibility to ensure that the MOU details and activities that each member of the partnership is to perform, or release any member of the partnership in every statement and assurance made by the partnership's application in the application. That's, of course, going to apply essentially one-sidedly to the Osage Nation. Now, here's the interesting part. We see here that the name signature of the Osage County Interlocal Cooperative signer from 2016 is blanked out. It's redacted by putting a white bar across it citing B6. That's very odd. Now, only the signature is blacked out for the Osage Nation, or blanked out in white. A white box. It looks like it was just superimposed on a photo. But the name Jeffrey Standing Bear, Principal Chief, is left. So that's pretty interesting there. Now, the next one we're going to look at is the Memorandum of Agreement on Native Languages. And this is a long list of so-called federal agencies on it, including the U.S. Department of the Interior, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, White House Council on Environmental Quality, U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services, Library of Congress, National Endowment of the Arts, and National Endowment for the Humanities. And they're all broken down into different ones. The lead agencies collectively are the U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of the Interior, Health and Human Services, and the Department of Education. That's no surprise there. Federal agencies have also heard concerns regarding the cultural sensitivity to the needs of communities of origin to control their cultural narratives, sacred knowledge, and sacred objects. I think we all know what that means. The control aspect is very important. In that context, they control the identity, essentially steal the identity of a people group, with the implications of children being the focal point. The ED's, or Education Department, mission is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness. There's that global there, globalism, the global pledge, the global citizen, etc., by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access to high-quality education. Signatories of lead agencies on the MOA on native languages have no printed name. They're all secretaries, though, apparently, dated 2021. And you can't, with most of these, you cannot read the name on the signatory line. However, participating agencies do in fact have the printed name, including Crosby Kepper, Robin L. Dale, Ann Eilers, Adam Wolfson, and Brenda Mallory. Between Robin, Ann, and Adam, we have deputy, acting, and acting. Isn't that interesting? Then for supporting agencies, again, we have no print name, and the signatures are unreadable. Now this gets us into templates. This is the Safe Schools, Healthy Students, MOA components, a mission statement, desired outcomes logic model, description of partner responsibilities, commitment, and support. This is what should be apparently contained in an MOA. Programmatic reporting, financial responsibility performing, information sharing, evaluation of data, chain of command, interesting use of the word there, chain of command, mental health services, and then the signatures. with the authorized representatives of the LEA, local juvenile justice agency, local law enforcement agency, also would be LEA, law enforcement agency, local education agency. You get what they're doing with the words here. Local public mental health authority. So here we understand from this last section on the components of the MOA exactly who needs to be involved as far as the child industry goes. First, they need mental health experts to determine that parents are unstable and incapable of taking care of a quote-unquote at-risk or mentally disabled child. Then you have the local law enforcement agency forcibly take that child, and then the local juvenile justice agency sends that child to a facility where then the authorized LEA, of course, local education agency will, of course, administer through the whole process, and then eventually that child will be harvested for pharmaceutical products like epinephrine. So anybody who has used or injected epinephrine, unfortunately, has injected adrenaline or components of adrenaline taken from children ranging from 8 to 10 years old. And there's much more products, pharmaceutical-wise, that are extracted from these children that are put into detention centers or the foster system, if not outright sent somewhere to be used as free labor. I mean, they leverage all the quote-unquote students in schools for free labor anyway, and we recognize that as completely normal. It's really disgusting how much the general population turns a blind eye to the obvious child industry and, in fact, put their children into it to be used for that purpose. So this is the methods of administration MOA program. Under terms to know, letters of findings, LOF, post-monitoring report sent to the chief LEA administrator. Here in parentheses got chancellor or head of school. Office of Civil Rights monitors the state's MOA programs. Voluntary Compliance Plan, VCP, include corrective actions to be remedied by the subrecipient and agreed mutually between the OSSE/CTE and the chief LEA administrator. Department's Office of Civil Rights, OCR, mission is to ensure equal access to education and to promote educational excellence throughout the nation through vigorous enforcement of civil rights. Now, don't you love their term there, vigorous enforcement? That is a declaration that they are planning to use force. Anytime anybody uses the word enforcement, they are talking about obligation by threat, if not outright force, right? What force could be anything from making somebody do something physically to using the threat of death if they don't. There's so many different varieties of force, but that's really what it means. So the law, as far as we're concerned, is supposed to be the U.S. Constitution, being the supreme law of the land and the oath to which all members of the armed forces, right, force enforcement, swear an oath. In the Constitution, it states that it is the militia which is supposed to enforce the law. The militia, of course, being, as according to the Second Amendment, those who can keep and bear arms. It's not any of these other corporate groups. However, if none of these corporate groups were there, it's very unlikely that you could get the local population to take other people's children, their neighbors' children, and put them into these facilities. That requires mercenaries. That's essentially speaking what police and sheriff and so-called law enforcement across the planet are. They are corporate mercenaries designed to leverage protective control and enforcement of a child industry, child-based industry. Separate recipients receiving federal funds for CTE programs receiving methods of administration review every 5 years. There we go again with the 5 years. Separate recipients must comply with federal laws or remedy findings following MOA Perkins reviews. Before the site reviews, OSSE responsibilities, conducts a desk audit and reviews online documents at school, LEA policy and procedure manuals, building floor plans, CT admission requirements, and programs of study. LEA responsibilities helps gather and to refer subrecipient website links leading to school policy and procedure manuals, building floor plan, CT administration requirements, and programs of study. And this is DC, Washington, D.C., I believe. Yeah, I'll go back to the front. It says Career Technical Education, DC, CTE. Oh, and of course, Office of the State Superintendent of Education, Washington, D.C., 1050 First Street, Northeast. After the site review, OSSE drafts and sends LOF and VCP review and approval. That's letter of finding and voluntary compliance something. LEA responsibilities, reads and approves LOF, creates plan and timeline for corrective actions for findings, and signs off on these plans for the VCP. And then these, we're going to go ahead and skip through some of these two. Group activity, what's wrong with this picture? Picture of parking lot. Parking space identification signs shall include the international symbol of accessibility. Notice the word there, international. Enforcing, right? As enforcing international whatnot. Make sure the continuous notice of non-discrimination is on your LEA's website. I wonder why they want that. Make sure students and parents know your school's grievance procedures, which is basically you can complain, but it's going to make no difference. That's what as it has always been. Check your CAR data and Tableau dashboard to track patterns and equity gaps. As usual, administration by automatic and distant separated presence. The DCCT, Diversity, Equity, Access, and Inclusion, DEAI, Resource Initiative offers technical assistance strategies to close the equity gaps among special population students in the district who are enrolled in career technical education CT programs of study. I'll narrow it down for you. The DEAI they're talking about, Diversity, Equity, Access, and Inclusion, precisely aligns with the child industry concept. Diversity of product, equity of product, access to product, and inclusion into the product commerce. National Alliance for Partners in Equity are DEAI resources, as well as the State Board of Education Social Studies Standards Guiding Principles. Interesting names there. And here we've got coming soon data equity training modules. This is their standard brainwashing procedure for online training that's going to be mandatory for everyone. Establish common understanding of what it means to adopt an equity mindset and consider the role of data analysis in promoting diversity, inclusion, equity, and access within CTE programs. Practice analyzing CTE student enrollment data to discover which student populations are participating in your programs and which groups might be missing an opportunity to benefit from CTE. That's, as they say before, all will be included whether they want it to or not. Learn how to draft an equity gap statement and conduct a root cause analysis to better understand why concerning trends exist in your student enrollment data. Develop SMART goals to address the equity gaps that have been identified within your student enrollment data and identify concrete action steps that can be taken to achieve those goals. And like I said before, Washington, D.C., superintendent, blah, blah, blah. Now this is methods of administration, interestingly, MOA. Access to Career and Technical Education, CTE. Program Guidance 2020 to 2021. Texas Education Agency. Here we've got the same definitions as the other one, but in this case it states the methods of administration for access MOA to career and technical education is designed to ensure all students, that means between every age group from 0 to death, you are forever a student according to them, enjoy equal access to CTE programs of study and activities, whether you want to or not. Smartsheet will be the primary receptacle for documentation. The LEA will select staff to submit documentation via the Smartsheet form. Each item submitted will be categorized as to the indicator it validates. The Smartsheet form link will be emailed to the LEA and the same form will be used for each section of the submission. The LEA will need to identify itself for each submission and select the ESC that is working with the LEA. That's what it looks like there. And the next we have Memorandum of Agreement and Academic Affiliations at American University. This is from March 4th, 2022. We've got the table of contents. Under background, it says these agreements define the extent to which the partner organization is entitled to use AU premises, resources, personnel, logos, branding, etc., or vice versa. They also establish AU's right to use the affiliate organization's amenities or expertise for a cost or exchange of services. This document was created with the purpose of helping units within academic affairs understand the university's policies and procedures regarding the establishment of a new partnership. Enclosed are guidelines concerning the preparation, review, approval, implementation, and record keeping of affiliation agreements to ensure the process is uniform within all academic units. Mandatory agreement language, which must be contained in all university academic affairs agreements, is under required provisions. Instructional Revenue Center, IRC. An IRC is a specialized course offered on an experimental basis or a program contracted by an outside agency to offer credit or non-credit training. Interestingly, the name of the organization is the Instructional Revenue Center. Educational Services, a contractual relationship to provide academic and administrative services for students or employees of one or both institutions, e.g. customized programs exclusively designed for employees of a government agency. Interesting. Now we have this little diagram here, the little 3 circles with MOA, procurement, and sponsored award. So I think we know what those are about. Sponsored award is the financial leash. Procurement is, as it says, procurement. And MOA can either be a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of administration, or however many other uses for that particular acronym there actually are. Under red flag scenarios, it states concerns regarding personal safety and health of faculty and students in high-risk areas. High-risk areas also aligns with at-risk populations. Reports of problematic communication and financial disagreements with prior partners. Sounds like they're planning to screw some people here. Requesters who need to obtain approval for changes to MOA template clauses can access the OGC contract review request link from the MOA SharePoint site. Required MOA provisions. Period not to exceed 5 years. And here we get the stipulation for across the board 5 years, which we find replicated in all of these MOUs. Just about. MOAs, MOUs, whatever, same thing. Protective language around AU logos or affiliate use of AU marketing materials. Force majeure / emergency situations. This is not what most of us think, as far as those who are familiar with contracts, about force majeure or emergency situations. Usually that clause is contained in contracts to stipulate that when something arises out of their capabilities to continue what they need to do, say construction in an area that's been taken over and is no longer viable to continue construction there, you have a force majeure clause to protect you from any fallout. That is not what they mean by it. What they mean by it is no matter the situation, no matter what happens, there will be a quote-unquote continuity of service. No matter what. This will continue. It will keep happening. So an example of this would be if you get a scoop on a shipment of epinephrine, adrenochrome, or adrenolutine, or however you say that, from a chemical corporation that was extracted from children in detention centers, with of course those children being used up and dying of natural causes, of accident, suicide, whatever they want to say. So let's say you get a scoop on a shipment of these products and you decide to hit it, not to steal or rob it or resell it somewhere else, but to destroy it and damage their child extraction industry. Well, they will simply replace it from somewhere else. A local community decides to get together and say, you are no longer allowed to access our children one way or another. It doesn't matter if they're our own children, if they're neighbors. You are not allowed to do anything with children whatsoever. And if you're caught doing it, then you get hanged, shot, burned alive, flayed, whatever. Well, then they'll use this community over here and suck up their children and use their children to replace the product that had been denied them. That's what they mean by force majeure or emergency situations. And then, of course, you have the electronic signature. And this is going to relate to a lot more, of course. So this isn't simply just about the children, but we're focusing in this video at least on the child industry and how these relate to that. Using the MOA SharePoint system, only designated persons have access to the MOA SharePoint system. Yeah, surprise, surprise. Submitting MOAs for review, approval, and signature. A memo from Dean or department head explaining reasons for which the partnership is recommended. Copies of agreements in English is the official MOA language, and all other translations is needed by the other institution. A university budget office UBO approved budget summary is required when the agreement includes an IRC component which is not previously approved in the school's fiscal year budget. The global safety website can be accessed at www.american.edu/emergency/globalsafety.cfm. And there you can see it right there, if you can read that. Approval and signature process. The approval and signature process can take a few steps to complete. Please submit requests with plenty of time before the agreement start date. American University Department, enter the applicable department. There is no drop down for this field. You can manually enter the department for the first time. This field will then auto-populate the next time after you type the first few letters of the department. That, of course, means you're inventing a whole bunch of different departments, entities, whatever. The AU contact shall be someone from the department instead of the VPAA. Other institution location. If the institution location is international, please enter the risk rating. The risk rating for the location can be obtained by clicking on the destination risk rating information link below the cell. This link will take you to the World Q Planner to look up the risk rating. Financial information, please check yes or no, or is there any revenue generated from this partnership? Please attach both MOA and Dean's memo and all applicable documents as outlined above. This is stipulated in all caps. We have process dates. MOAs cannot exceed 5 years without approval by OGC, and we find that in all these subsequent MOAs/MOUs. Please note that SharePoint does not allow special characters such as, special characters in attachment names. Please press the Submit to Dean button after the agreement is submitted to the SharePoint site is routed to the appropriate Dean/designate, so not necessarily quote-unquote Dean. When the MOA is approved by the appropriate designate, it will be routed to the next level. If the MOA is a graduate level agreement, it will be routed to the Dean of Graduate and Professional Studies. If the MOA is non-degree level, it will be routed to the Dean of Graduate and Professional Studies. As soon as the above reviews have been processed, the document will be routed to the Vice Provost for Academic Administration. The VPAA will approve the document and sign on behalf of the Provost. Common issues that may delay the process include MOA approved template was not used. Requester answered yes I'm using the MOA approved template, but modifications are made to the template. And it's always fun to see just how micromanaging and distrustful the people that set this garbage up really are. All notifications emails from the SharePoint site relate to MOA approvals go to the following email inbox: moa.provost@americanedu.edu. Following monitoring activities should be conducted by the units: documenting performance metrics, including student attendance, marketing activities, and other key metrics, as well as conducting a periodic review of those metrics; documenting incidents, disputes, and/or disagreements, their status and outcome; documenting course competition, certification receipts, certification copies, and student tracking methods for all certification programs. SharePoint MOA reports. Clicking on the doc status will further expand the listing for each category and show a complete listing of MOAs in the applicable category. Click on View Doc to open the MOA entry showing all MOA details and documents. Once open in this view, MOA entry must be edited by clicking on the Edit item. And this has a link for all of that. So you can read all that there. I'm really not going to cover all of that. It's details about the way their system works. And we have Excel reports, record retention and disposal policy, and records retention responsibilities. And you can probably expect how those are written. And here you see it's the American University, Washington, D.C. Memorandums of Agreement. Next, we have the District of Columbia Office of the State Superintendent of Education, as we referenced before in that other one, Memorandum of Administration. Memorandum of Agreement between D.C. Public Charter School Local Education Agency, LEA names, and D.C. Public School in its capacity as both a Head Start agency and LEA, Bright Beginnings, Central NIA, Edward C. Mazik Parent-Child Center, Rosemount Center, and United Planning Organizations, collectively the Head Start agencies, HSAs. I love all these acronyms, they're absolutely unnecessary. Office of the State Superintendent of Education, OSSE, and other early child development programs, if feasible. Enter into his Memorandum of Agreement for the purpose of establishing a collaborative partnership to ensure the implementation of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. DC Public Charter Schools are their own ELEA for purposes of ESEA Title I. Some charter school LEAs have multiple campuses. And here on the signatory page, which you can see there's virtually none, we have Han Suel Kang, State Superintendent of Education. Now that's very interesting and very odd. Next we have, next and it looks like our last document for this video, we have the Maryland State Department of Education. Dear Enter Name, thank you for hosting us at your facility for an on-site visit. This is a fill in the blank, by the way. The Maryland State Department of Education's MSDE Office of College and Career Pathways facilitated a methods of administration monitoring and review for the LEA. So this is our quote-unquote oversight, as it were. Richard Kincaid, Executive Director, Office of College and Career Pathways. CC Tiffany De Jesus, or De Jesus, however you want to say that. Director of Operations, Accountability and Strategy. Bryce Thomas, Coordinator of Equity and Civil Rights for Career Programs, LEACT Director and LEA Facilities Director. Sincerely. Model MOA Project PA Template Amendment. Amendment to insert full name of the agreement, agreement whereas, and of course we have all these whereases and they love to use those in their stupid fill in the blank crap. Insert month and year of execution, insert a concise explanation of the reasons for the amendment, insert name of the federal agency. Only as whereas clause if the ACHP is not a signatory to the agreement. Insert number of the amendment, insert signatories of the agreement. Insert the number of stipulation to be amended so as it reads, insert the amended text of the stipulation and or if the amendment involves adding new stipulation to the agreement, insert the number of new stipulation, insert the text of the new stipulation. So this is understandable why they can proliferate this crap everywhere, because they have all these templates. And here's one we see a lot. Memorandum of Agreement between the name of LE agency and name of BH agency, name of program operation. Memorandum of Agreement MOA is entered in the name of LE agency and the name of BH agency for purpose of continuing program name, which consists of detailed description of program initiatives. The agreement is effective the first day of include date and terminates upon mutual agreement between the name of LE agency and the BH agency. Life of this agreement is all subject to blah blah blah. The foundation of this agreement is established pursuant to the written communication between fill in the blank. Purpose of the agreement, fill in the blank. Name of joint operation, fill in the blank. And mission of operation, fill in the blank. Management of operation. Deployment of personnel by name of LEA agency or LE agency. Deployment of personnel by name of BH agency. Office space, transportation, equipment, and supplies. Access to police facilities. Interesting, under confidentiality and sharing of information, all personnel assigned to the name of operation shall be knowledgeable and abide with provisions of the law pertaining to confidentiality of information related to a client's mental history and other medical records, and shall be in HIPAA Health Information Privacy Protection Act compliance both in areas of privacy and security of protected health information. Responsibility for dispatching SMART or CAMP, off-hour management of mental illness response calls, unusual occurrences, and tactical mobilizations. This is going to get a lot weirder. Training. The name of LE agency will provide name of BH agency, personnel with mental health intervention team training and crisis negotiation team training. The name of BH agency shall provide sworn name of program, personnel, mental illness field, and investigation training relative to the name of program missions. The name of BH agency shall provide intellectual and personal support to the name of LE agency for its mental illness training conferences and classroom training sessions as requested by the name of LE agency. Not private right created. And then we have signature chief of police / sheriff, and then director BH agency name and LE agency name, city, state, date, etc. Now, this brings us to Memorandum of Understanding. The objective of this agreement is to promote long-term cooperative activities in order to promote cooperation between the Minnow State University and University of Lodz Faculty of Management. Yes, that is not a local, domestically based university. So you have a so-called land grant school making and entering into an agreement of its own volition with a foreign entity. Interesting. The Memorandum of Understanding MOU is made and entered into on blah 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 2016 in Minnow, North Dakota, USA, between Minnow State University, situated at 500 University Avenue, West Minnow, North Dakota, USA, and that's Minot, M-I-N-O-T, as in the French. Hereinafter referred to as MSU. In the University of Lodz Faculty of Management, situated at Ul Materki, 22/26 Lodz, Poland. Hereinafter referred to as ULH University, referred to as a university. There was a particular adoption representative who had connections to Poland for child trafficking purposes by the name of Marjorie Cole, I believe was the name. But that was part of the fake news propaganda, and who knows if it was real or not. The University of Lodz is one of the largest academic centers in Poland, with 40,000 students. The faculty and management includes 9 academic departments and support degrees at the undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral levels. Polish American Management Center, PAM, established that's probably a typo. In 1995, houses the Polish American Executive MBA program. Minnow State University College of Business was organized into a separate academic unit in 1927 and is accredited by the IACBE, International Assembly for Collegiate Business Education and Higher Learning Commission, and NSAT, or NCATE, or NCATE, however you'd say that. National Council for Accreditation of Teacher Education. MSU is one of the leading educational institutions in the fields of management and international business in North Dakota. With a view to advancing a collaborative relationship, the two universities agreed to subscribe as signatories to this MOU with and to work together to develop a formal agreement and academic partnership and create programs of value to both parties. Further, the agreement is intended to advance the interests of both universities and contribute to an enduring institutional linkage for education, cooperation, and assistance. So that's a bunch of gobbledygook for treason. Within fields that are mutually acceptable, the parties intend to pursue the following general forms of cooperation: visits by and interchange of staff for the purposes of research. There's a cover term for you. Teaching and discussion and professional development. I think we all know what that means at this point. The address for notices at Minnow State University is Miss Libby Clairboat, Director International Programs, Minnow State University. Isn't that interesting? International Programs Director. Interesting name there. And then University of Lodz Polish American Management Center is Awelina or Avelina Zersyka. Whatever, those Polish names are difficult to say. Unless, of course, you speak Polish. PhD, University of Lodz Faculty of Management, Department of Accounting. Interesting. However, they are assigned a Dr. Stephen Shirley, President, Minnow State University in 2016, and a Professor Grigory Urbanek, PhD, Pro-Rector for Economic Affairs, University of Lodz. Next, we have North Carolina State University Memorandum of Agreement for Research. Raleigh, North Carolina. Click or tap here to enter text. Click or tap here to enter text for sponsor. Whereas the project agreement is a mutual interest to the university and sponsor. Public service missions of the university. Sponsor desires to provide funding for the support of research project. Scope of project: the university will use its best efforts to perform activities. Click or tap here to enter text. Click or tap here to enter text. Principal investigator: the project shall, under the provision of click or whatever PI, project performance, and the same click or tap here. Payment fixed price. And then we have signatories, sponsor, North Carolina State University, and read and understood by principal and investigator, and they are all click or tap here's. This is supposed to be brain dead, easy for anybody to do, and to be proliferated by assistant and acting secretaries and sub-directors and all this other nonsense. Next we have the Memorandum of Agreement from March 30, 2022, University of New Mexico Administration and United Academics of University of New Mexico Mass Salary Update. And this is going to be a payment increase specifically for bargaining unit members, and that is, of course, is an effective way to kick out anybody who is not malleable, shall we say, and of course is not subject to all these other separate rules or regulations and all this other nonsense, and for other purposes. And this is signed University of New Mexico, Provost Executive VP Academic Affairs President from 2022, and an Ernesto Longa from the United Academics of the University of New Mexico. There will be more of this type of information, this type of documentation and evidence. There is just so much. It is hard to accurately capture the scope of all of this into one easy to digest package. And what's interesting is the amount of nonsense that these people put into things and speak about. And they have the audacity to say of those who attempt to condense into a deliverable package that it's rambling and disjointed.